A year after my wife's sudden stroke took her from me, I finally gathered the courage to fix the leak behind the wall of her old home office. I thought it would be a simple repair, just another quiet step in moving on. I was sitting in church when my phone started vibrating in my pocket. The plumber's voice on the other end wasn't calm. It was tight, urgent. "Sir, you need to come home." "Now," he whispered. "I found something hidden inside your wife's office wall, and you cannot tell anyone about this." By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands were shaking. What my wife had concealed behind that wall wasn't just a secret. It was something dark enough to tear my entire family apart. Thank you for being here and walking through this story with me. Before we go any further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It truly means a lot to see how many corners of the world these stories reach. And just so we're on the same page, parts of this story have been thoughtfully fictionalized to help illustrate the deeper meaning behind what happened. Any resemblance to real people or places is purely coincidental. But the message at its heart is very real, and I believe it's something that could truly make a difference for you. When the call came on a gray Tuesday afternoon, exactly 6 months after we lowered my wife into the ground, I had been sitting in the our living room, though the word felt less honest with every passing day, staring at the closed door to Miriam's office. That door had remained shut since the morning she collapsed in April. I told myself I was preserving her space. The truth was simpler. I was afraid to open it. Afraid of the silence. Afraid that the room would no longer carry her warmth, only the cold outline of what used to be there. My phone vibrated in my hand and snapped me back to the present. The caller ID read Wesley Kane, the plumber I had finally hired after months of ignoring the faint, persistent drip behind that closed door. "Mr. Lawson." Wesley's voice was tight, stripped of the casual professionalism I'd heard during our earlier scheduling call. "You need to come home. Right now." My stomach clenched. "Wesley, I'm at the grocery store. Is the leak worse than you thought?" "It's not the pipe," he said. Then he lowered his voice. "I found something. Something you need to see." A pause. I could hear him breathing like a man trying to steady himself. "And don't come alone. Bring your son. Bring both your sons if you have them." The line went dead. I left my cart in the produce aisle of Safeway apples, milk bread abandoned, and drove home faster than I had any right to. The autumn air in Lake Oswego felt sharp against my skin when I stepped out of the car, but I barely noticed. Wesley's truck was already in the driveway, engine off, sitting there like a warning sign. He met me at the front door before I could unlock it. Sawdust clung to his flannel shirt. His face, usually steady and sun-warmed, looked pale. "Mr. Lawson," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. I didn't know what the right thing was here, but I figured you should see it first." See what? He didn't answer. He just turned and walked down the hallway. We passed framed photographs, Miriam and me on our 25th anniversary. Dennis in his cap and gown, smiling so wide I could almost hear his laugh. My chest tightened as we stopped in front of that closed door. 6 months of walking past it. 6 months of pretending that as long as it stayed shut, some piece of her was still inside. Wesley pushed it open. The room looked violated. The carpet had been peeled back near the wall where Miriam's desk used to stand. Tools were scattered across the floor, and the wall. God, the wall behind her desk was gone entirely. Not a small hole, not a careful cut. Removed. The wooden studs stood exposed, revealing darkness beyond. "The leak was back there," Wesley said. "I had to open it up. But when I did..." He aimed his flashlight into the gap. "You need to look." I stepped forward slowly. The beam sliced through the shadows and illuminated something that did not belong. A space, hidden, deliberate. About 5 feet wide, maybe 6 feet tall. A cavity carved between her office wall and the bathroom behind it. The interior drywall was unfinished, never painted. Raw. This wasn't some forgotten architectural quirk from when we built the house in the 80s. Someone had constructed this intentionally, recently, and in the far corner of that concealed space sat a small safe recessed into the wall like a secret organ. "I didn't touch it," Wesley said quickly. "Didn't open anything." "But Mr. Lawson, your wife." He didn't finish. My wife had built a hidden room in our home and never told me. Miriam, who had shared 42 years of marriage with me, who had cried on my shoulder when Dennis left for college, who had insisted we never go to bed angry, who said secrets rotted a marriage from the inside out. The safe had a digital keypad, 4 digits. My hands shook as I entered 0615, June 15th. Our wedding day. The day we promised there would be no secrets between us. The lock clicked. Inside were 3 items: a USB drive, a leather-bound journal I recognized instantly, Miriam's private notebook, the one she kept tucked away in her desk drawer, and a stack of manila folders. Each folder tab bore a name written in her neat, deliberate handwriting. Dennis, my son, Celeste, my daughter-in-law, Dr. Malcolm Crane, our family physician, Elliot Sutherland, my business partner of 3 decades, my closest friend. The air felt thin. I pulled the folders out one at a time, my mind refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. "Mr. Lawson," Wesley said softly behind me. "I think someone's been in here before." I turned. "Look at the dust." He was right. In the flashlight beam, faint disturbances marked the thin layer coating the floor of the hidden space. Subtle impressions, as if someone had stepped carefully, tried to brush their tracks away, but hadn't done it perfectly. Someone else knew about this room. Someone had been searching. "That's why I said maybe call the police," Wesley added. "And your son. This doesn't feel like just construction work. This feels wrong." My phone vibrated again. Dennis. His name glowed on the screen. My only child. I stared at it, unable to move. If I answered, I would have to speak. And I wasn't ready to hear his voice. Not yet. Not until I understood what Miriam had hidden. Wesley shifted uncomfortably. "I should go. Give you space, but Mr. Lawson." He held my gaze. "Be careful. Whatever this is, your wife went to a lot of trouble to conceal it." He let himself out. The house fell silent. I stood alone in the gutted office, surrounded by the bones of my home and the secrets of my marriage. I picked up the journal. The leather was worn smooth from Miriam's hands. The thought that she had trusted these pages with something she couldn't tell me felt like a blade sliding between my ribs. The first entry was dated March 2023, more than a year before she died. I swallowed and began to read. Leonard the page began, her handwriting steady and unmistakable. "If you are reading this, then I am already gone." And it was not an accident. The journal slipped from my fingers and hit the floor. Outside, the sun shone as if nothing had shifted. A lawnmower hummed somewhere down the street. A car door slammed. Normal sounds. An ordinary day. But inside that ruined office, staring at my wife's words glowing up at me from the hardwood like an accusation, I understood something with chilling clarity. My wife hadn't died the way they said she had. And whatever she had uncovered before she died was powerful enough to make someone else search for it after she was gone. Nothing in my life would ever be normal again. I locked the office door behind me. Rain began to fall outside, tapping against the window in the same rhythm Miriam's fingers used to drum when she was thinking. I sat down at her desk and opened the journal to the second page. My hands trembled as I turned each sheet, Miriam's familiar handwriting, words she had written in secret, knowing I might never see them. Words she had hidden, because she knew something terrible was coming. The first dated entry was from March 2023, more than a year before she died. March 15th, 2023. I found discrepancies in the company accounts. Dennis has been moving money, large amounts. I need to investigate quietly. My breath caught. Dennis, our son. Miriam had suspected him over a year ago. I flipped forward, my pulse hammering. August 3rd, 2023. I've been looking into Dennis's wife, Celeste. She isn't who she claims to be. Previous marriages, previous deaths. I'm frightened, but I need more proof. The rain grew heavier, drumming harder against the glass. I could barely hear it over the roar in my ears. January 9th, 2024. I've been feeling ill. Nausea, hair loss, confusion. My vitamins taste different. Dr. Crane prescribed them. Elliot introduced Dr. Crane to our family 10 years ago. Could there be a connection? Dr. Crane, Elliot Sutherland. Names I had trusted. Names Miriam had questioned. I turned the page and the handwriting changed, shakier now, less controlled. February 18th, 2024. I confronted Celeste yesterday. She smiled at me and said, "You should be more careful, Miriam. I need to tell Leonard, but I need proof first." My wife had faced down a killer, alone. The final entries were from late March 2024, just weeks before Miriam died. The handwriting was barely legible, scrawled in jagged lines across the page. March 28th, 2024. Worse today. Can't think clearly. Saw lawyer, safety deposit box. Forgive me, Leonard. That was the last entry in ink. But clipped to the final page was a small note in Miriam's hand, written in pencil. The letters large and unsteady. USB drive. Listen. April 10th, 2024. 2 days before she died. I pulled the USB drive from the safe and plugged it into Miriam's old laptop, still sitting on the corner of her desk. The screen flickered to life, and a single audio file appeared. I clicked play, static. Then Miriam's voice, soft and hoarse, filled the room. "Leonard, if you're hearing this, I've run out of time." I pressed my hand over my mouth, tears blurring my vision. "Look at my medical records. Dr. Crane is lying. It wasn't a stroke. The symptoms, they're consistent with poisoning. Thallium, maybe. I don't know. But I know it wasn't natural." Her voice wavered, and I heard her take a shaky breath. "And Elliot never forgave me for choosing you. I thought he had moved on, but I was wrong. He introduced Crane to us. He loaned Dennis money when Dennis was desperate. He's been there, Leonard, in the background, waiting. Watching." A long pause. Rain battered the window. "I've left evidence with my lawyer, Lillian Prescott. She has instructions. If anything happens to me, she'll open a sealed file in April 2025. But I don't know if I'll make it that long." Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted to be sure. I wanted to protect you. But now I'm afraid I've waited too long." Another pause. I could hear her crying softly. "Please, Leonard, protect yourself. Don't trust Dennis. Don't trust Celeste. And don't trust Elliot. I love you. I will always love you." The recording ended. I sat in the dark, the rain pounding, Miriam's voice still echoing in my head. She had known. She had known she was being poisoned. She had known who was doing it. And she had tried to save me. I looked down at the journal, at the folders spread across the desk. Dennis. Celeste. Dr. Crane. Elliot. All of them connected. All of them circling like vultures. And Miriam had stood between them and me. I pressed my hands to my face, grief crashing over me in waves. I had thought I was mourning a wife who had died of natural causes. But now I knew the truth. Miriam had been murdered, and the people who killed her were still out there, still close, still dangerous. I wiped my eyes and reached for my phone. I needed to call someone. The police. A lawyer. Someone who could help me make sense of this nightmare. But before I could dial, headlights swept across the window. I froze. A car was pulling into my driveway. I glanced at the clock on Miriam's desk, 8:47 p.m. Dennis and Celeste's weekly check-in visit. They were early. I looked at the journal, the USB drive, the folders scattered across the desk. If they saw any of this, if they knew I had found Miriam's evidence. I heard the car doors slam outside, footsteps on the front porch. I had 30 seconds, maybe less. My hands shook as I shoved the journal and the USB drive back into the safe. I slammed it shut, spun the lock, and pushed the panel back into place over the hidden compartment. The folders, I swept them into Miriam's desk drawer and shut it. The doorbell rang. I stood, my heart pounding, and forced myself to take a breath. I couldn't let them see my fear. I couldn't let them know I knew. I walked to the front door, flipped on the porch light, and opened it. Dennis stood there smiling, rain dripping from his jacket. Celeste stood beside him, her eyes sharp and watchful. "Hey, Dad," Dennis said. "Hope we're not too early." I smiled back, every muscle in my body screaming to run. "Not at all," I said. "Come in." Celeste's eyes softened in a way that might have fooled me yesterday. "We all miss her," she said gently. I nodded, swallowing the rage that threatened to choke me. This woman, this killer, standing in my home, pretending to mourn my wife. "Can I get you anything?" I asked. "Coffee?" "That'd be great," Dennis said, following me into the kitchen. I moved through the motions, grinding beans, filling the pot, setting out mugs while every nerve in my body screamed at me to run. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I knew what they wanted. "So," Dennis said, leaning against the counter. "The plumber. Everything okay with Mom's office?" I kept my face neutral. "Just old pipes. You know how it is with these old houses. He had to open up the wall, right?" Dennis pressed. "Did he find anything, old papers? Maybe Mom kept a lot of stuff in there." I met his eyes. My son. The boy I had taught to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to shake hands like a man. The boy who had helped murder his own mother. "Nothing important," I said. "Just dust and spiders." Dennis relaxed just slightly, but I saw it. I poured the coffee and carried the mugs back to the living room. Celeste had made herself comfortable on the couch. Her legs crossed, her expression pleasant and watchful. "So, Leonard," she said, as I handed her a mug. "Have you thought any more about updating your will? I know it's difficult to think about, but Dennis is worried. After Miriam, well, these things should be in order." I forced a smile. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon." "Of course not," Celeste said smoothly. "But you never know. Accidents happen." The way she said it, so casual, so matter-of-fact, sent ice down my spine. Dennis jumped in. "My friend Conrad Mercer, remember him, Dad? He's a lawyer now. Really good with estate planning. He could help you get everything sorted out." Conrad Mercer. The name from Miriam's journal. "I'll think about it," I said. We talked for another 20 minutes, small talk, surface-level pleasantries that felt like walking through a minefield. Every word, every gesture I analyzed through this new lens of suspicion. Dennis kept steering the conversation back to finances, to the company, to my plans for the future. Celeste watched me. Not obviously, but I felt her eyes tracking every movement, every flicker of emotion. When I excused myself to use the bathroom, I heard them whispering in the kitchen. I stopped in the hallway, just out of sight, and listened. "Do you think he found it?" Celeste's voice low and sharp. "If he did, we need to move faster." Dennis sounded stressed. "Your window is closing." "Then maybe it's time to..." I flushed the toilet loudly and walked back into the kitchen. They both looked up, smiling. "Everything okay, Dad?" Dennis asked. "Fine," I said. "Just getting old." Celeste laughed, a light, pleasant sound that made my stomach turn. They stayed another half hour. Dennis reminded me again about Conrad Mercer. Celeste touched my arm as she said goodbye, her fingers cool and deliberate. "Take care of yourself, Leonard," she said. "We worry about you." I stood at the door and watched their car pull away, the taillights disappearing down the street. My own son had done this. I closed the door and locked it. Then I locked the deadbolt. Then I slid the chain into place. For a long time, I just stood there, my forehead pressed against the wood, trying to process what I had just heard. Your window is closing. Maybe it's time to... Time to what? Finish me off the way they had finished Miriam. I pushed away from the door and walked back into the living room. My hands were shaking again. I poured myself another whiskey and drank it in one swallow. Miriam had known. She had known, and she had tried to warn me, and I hadn't listened. I had been too blind, too trusting to see what was right in front of me. But now I saw, and I had to do something. I pulled out my phone, ready to call the police, but then I stopped. What would I tell them? That my son and daughter-in-law had whispered something suspicious in my kitchen. That I had found my dead wife's journal. They would think I was a grief-stricken old man losing his mind. Number one, I needed more. I needed proof. I set the phone down and started moving through the house, checking windows, doors, locks. Miriam used to joke that I watched too many crime shows, but she had been careful too. Cautious. She had taught me to be observant. That's when I saw it. In the living room next to the couch where Celeste had been sitting, there was a small decorative lamp, a gift from Dennis and Celeste last Christmas. I picked it up and turned it over, and there it was. A tiny camera, no bigger than a button, nestled inside the base. The lens still warm to the touch. They had been watching me. How long? Days, weeks. I set the lamp down carefully, my heart pounding. They knew, or they suspected. That's why they had come tonight. To see if I had found anything. To gauge my reaction. And now they were watching. Waiting. Planning. I looked around the room at the shadows, at the corners, at every object Dennis and Celeste had touched over the past 6 months. How many more cameras were there? How long had they been spying on me in my own home? I walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. Somewhere out there, my son and his wife were watching a live feed, waiting to see what I would do next. I turned off the lamp, let them watch the dark. I didn't sleep that night. At 7 in the morning, with the hidden camera wrapped in cloth on my passenger seat, I made the call I should have made months ago. By 8, I was climbing 3 flights of stairs in an old brick building in downtown Portland. No elevator. Just narrow steps that creaked under my weight and smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. The name Declan Foster. Private Investigations was painted on the frosted glass door in faded gold letters. I knocked and stepped inside. The office was small, just a desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet, and a window overlooking the street. But it was neat. Organized. The kind of place where things got done. Declan Foster looked up from his computer. Mid-40s, lean and wiry, with the sharp eyes of someone who didn't miss much. Former Portland PD, according to the framed commendation on the wall behind him. "Mr. Lawson," he said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was firm. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice," I said. "Sit." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "You sounded urgent." I sat down and placed everything on his desk. The USB drive, Miriam's journal, the camera I'd found in the lamp. 6 months of grief and growing fear, all laid out in front of a stranger. "My wife died 6 months ago," I began. My voice shook. "The doctor said it was a stroke, but I found evidence. She left me a journal, a recording. She didn't think it was natural." Declan leaned forward, his expression carefully neutral. "Go on." I told him everything. The hidden room, the safe, the journal entries tracking Dennis's financial crimes and Celeste's dark past. The recording where Miriam named Dr. Crane and Elliot Sutherland. The visit from Dennis and Celeste last night. The whispered conversation I'd overheard. And the camera. By the time I finished, my hands were trembling. Declan had filled 3 pages of notes in a worn leather notebook. He set his pen down and looked at me. "Mr. Lawson," he said quietly, "I'm going to be straight with you. This isn't paranoia. You're in danger. The words hit me like a physical blow. Hearing someone else say it made it real. Your son, Declan continued, has offshore accounts. I can see that much just from a basic search. Significant transfers started about 3 years ago. Hundreds of thousands at first. Then millions. He turned his computer screen toward me. Bank records, wire transfers, dates and amounts that painted a damning picture. And your daughter-in-law, Declan said, clicking to another screen. Celeste Lawson. Maiden name supposedly Whitman. But that's not her real name. He pulled up a series of articles from different newspapers, Arizona, Nevada, Washington State. We have Valerie Whitman, 2008. Married to a man named Spencer Reed. He died in a house fire. She collected a $200,000 life insurance payout. He clicked to the next article. Vivian Blackwood, 2010. Married to Nolan Bennett. He died in a boating accident. Another insurance payout. This time, $500,000. My stomach turned. She's been doing this for years, Declan said. Different names. Different men. Always a tragic accident. Always a payout. And Dennis. I asked, my voice hoarse. Does he know? Declan met my eyes. Your son is either being manipulated or he's complicit. Either way, your wife discovered something that got her killed. And now they know you're looking. The room felt too small. Too close. I couldn't breathe. The poisoning, I managed. The thallium Miriam mentioned. Is that possible? It's a classic method, Declan said grimly. Slow acting. Mimics natural illness, hair loss, confusion, nausea. If the doctor isn't looking for it, it's almost impossible to detect, especially if the doctor is in on it. Dr. Crane, Elliot, Dennis, Celeste. A conspiracy that had wrapped around Miriam like a noose. Declan stood and walked to the window. There's more. He pulled up another file on his computer, traffic camera footage from the street near my house. A dark sedan parked at different times over the past 2 weeks. Always within view of my driveway. Always watching. Someone's been surveilling you, Declan said. Professionally. This isn't just your son checking in. This is organized. I stared at the screen, my pulse roaring in my ears. What do? I whispered. Declan turned to face me. First, we secure your safety. No more living alone in that house without protection. Second, we gather evidence. Your wife's journal is good, but it's not enough for a criminal case. We need more financial records, witness statements, forensic proof. And third, he leaned against his desk, arms crossed. Your wife mentioned a lawyer in her journal. If she left evidence with someone, we need to find that person. Fast. Because whoever's behind this, they're looking for that evidence too. It took me a full day to find her, Miriam's college roommate. A woman I hadn't spoken to in years. Lillian Prescott, attorney at law with an office overlooking the Willamette River. When I stepped into her office that Thursday afternoon and saw the framed photograph on her desk, Miriam and Lillian laughing at a class reunion 10 years ago, I realized how much of my wife's inner world I had never known. Lillian stood to greet me. She was in her early 50s, sharp-eyed and composed, dressed in a charcoal blazer that spoke of quiet authority. But when she took my hand, her grip was warm. Leonard, she said gently. I've been waiting for this call. I just hoped it wouldn't come this soon. I sank into the chair across from her desk, exhausted. You knew. I knew Miriam was afraid, Lillian said, sitting down. I didn't know how bad it was until it was too late. She gestured to the photograph. Miriam and I reconnected about 5 years ago. We became close again. She trusted me. Well, she never mentioned you, I said quietly. She wanted to protect you, Lillian replied. The less you knew, the safer you were. Or so she thought. I pulled out Miriam's journal and set it on the desk. She left me this, and a recording. She said you were her lawyer, Lillian nodded slowly. She came to see me last year. She was terrified, Leonard. She'd discovered something about Dennis, about his wife, Celeste. I said the name bitter on my tongue. Yes. Lillian opened a file on her desk. Miriam brought me documents, financial records, background checks she'd done herself. She was convinced Celeste was dangerous, and she believed Dennis was either being manipulated or was complicit. My throat tightened. When did she come to you? The first time last March. But the last time, Lillian paused, her expression pained. A week before she died, she made an emergency appointment. She wanted to change her will immediately, remove Dennis entirely. The words hit me like a punch. She was going to disinherit him. Yes, she said she couldn't let him benefit from whatever was about to happen. I stared at her. She knew she was dying. Lillian's eyes filled with sorrow. She showed me the symptoms, Leonard. Hair loss, confusion, nausea. She was certain she was being poisoned. Why didn't she go to the police? My voice cracked. Why didn't she tell me? She tried to tell you, Lillian said softly. But you didn't see it. None of us did. And she was afraid that if she acted too soon, they'd cover their tracks. She needed proof. Ironclad proof. Did she get it? Lillian reached into her filing cabinet and pulled out a thick envelope sealed with red wax. She left me this, a sealed will. Instructions were very specific. It's not to be opened until 1 year after her death. April 2025. 6 more months. I leaned forward. Why would she wait? She said if she acted too quickly, they'd know she was onto them. She needed time to gather everything: bank records, medical evidence, testimony. She wanted to make sure that when the truth came out, it would be undeniable. I looked at the envelope. Inside it, Miriam's final weapon. Evidence that could bring down Dennis, Celeste, Dr. Crane, Elliot, all of them. But 6 months felt like an eternity. There's more, Lillian said, her voice turning grim. She slid a stack of legal documents across the desk. I scanned the top page. My name. A petition filed with the county court. Petition for determination of incapacity and appointment of guardian. What is this? I whispered. 3 days ago, Lillian said Conrad Mercer filed a motion with the court. He's trying to have you declared legally incompetent. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. Medical assessments. Statements from Dr. Malcolm Crane claiming I was suffering from dementia. Testimony from Dennis describing my erratic behavior since Miriam's death. And at the bottom, a signature. My signature. But I had never signed this document. They forged it, Lillian said, her jaw tight. They're claiming you requested Conrad Mercer as your legal guardian. If the court approves this, Dennis will control everything: your assets, your medical decisions, your life. I couldn't breathe. They're trying to erase me. Legally, yes, Lillian said. And once they have control, Leonard, you become a liability. Just like Miriam. The room spun. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about revenge. It was systematic. Calculated. They were going to take everything from me, and then, we fight back, Lillian said firmly. She opened her laptop and began typing. I'm filing a counter motion today. I'll get an independent psychiatric evaluation to prove you're of sound mind. I'll challenge the forgery. And I'll request a restraining order to keep Dennis and Celeste away from you until this is resolved. Will it work? I asked. It'll buy us time, Lillian said. But Leonard, you need to understand, this is going to get ugly. Conrad Mercer is good at what he does. And whoever's behind this has resources. Elliot Sutherland, if Miriam was right about him, has connections, money, influence. I don't care, I said, my voice hard. They killed my wife. They're trying to kill me. I'm not going to let them win. Lillian's expression softened. Miriam said you'd say that. She reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. She loved you, Leonard. Everything she did, the journal, the will, the evidence, she did it to protect you. Now it's our job to finish what she started. I nodded, tears blurring my vision. What do we do next? Lillian pulled up a calendar. The competency hearing is scheduled for next week. I'll represent you. But in the meantime, you need to stay safe. Do you have somewhere secure to go? I'm working with a private investigator, I said. Declan Foster. Lillian's eyes lit with recognition. Former Portland PD. Good man. Stay close to him. And don't go anywhere alone. If they're moving this fast, it means they're desperate. She handed me a business card with her direct number. Call me if anything happens, day or night. I stood to leave, but Lillian's voice stopped me. Leonard. I turned back. They're not just after your money, she said quietly. They're trying to erase you legally before they finish what they started with Miriam. And if that sealed will get opened early, if they find out what Miriam left behind, they'll destroy it. We have to protect you. Starting now. I walked out of her office and into the gray Portland afternoon, the weight of Lillian's words pressing down on me. They were trying to take everything. My wife, my son, my freedom, my life. But Miriam had left me a weapon, and I wasn't going to let her down. The attack came at 6:47 Monday morning through my bank account instead of a weapon. I was making coffee when my phone buzzed an alert from the bank. Transaction $50,000 transferred to offshore account. Authorized by Scott Lawson. Except I hadn't authorized anything. My hand froze on the coffee pot. I set it down and opened the banking app with shaking fingers. The transaction was there. $50,000 moved to an account in the Cayman Islands. The timestamp read 6:32 a.m. 15 minutes ago. I called the bank immediately. Mr. Lawson, the representative said after I explained. Our records show the transaction was authorized with your signature and security password. I didn't authorize it, I said, my voice tight. I want to see the authorization form. There was a pause. I'll send it to your email. The document arrived 60 seconds later. I opened it, my heart pounding. There it was, my signature at the bottom of a wire transfer request. But it wasn't my signature. It was close. Damn close. But the A in Lawson was slightly off the curve, too sharp, the loop too narrow. I'd been signing my name for 65 years. I knew the difference. This is forged, I told the representative. I'm sorry, Mr. Lawson, but without proof of fraud, we can't reverse the transaction. You'll need to file a formal dispute and provide documentation. How long will that take? 4 to 6 weeks. I hung up, fury boiling in my chest. They were moving, fast. My phone rang again. Dennis. I stared at the screen, my jaw clenched. Then I answered. Hey, Dad. Dennis said, his voice dripping with false concern. I just heard from the bank. They called me as your emergency contact. Are you okay? You've been a little confused about your finances lately. There it was, the gaslighting. I'm fine, I said evenly. Just a mistake. Are you sure? Dennis pressed. Because Mom used to handle all the money stuff, and I know you've been struggling since we lost her. Maybe you just forgot you authorized the transfer. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Maybe you're right, son. Everything's been hard. I know, Dad. I know. His voice softened, syrupy with fake sympathy. Listen, maybe it's time we sat down with Conrad Mercer. Get your estate stuff organized. Take some of the pressure off you. I'll think about it, I said. Great. I'll call you later to check in. He hung up. I stood in my kitchen staring at the phone and felt the rage settle into something colder. Sharper. They thought I was weak, confused, easy to manipulate. They had no idea. I called Declan. They hit my bank account, I said. 50 grand, forged signature. I expected, Declan said grimly. They're building a paper trail making you look financially incompetent. It's ammunition for the competency hearing. Can you prove the signature's fake? I know it is, but proving it in court. It will take time, Declan finished. Time they're not going to give you. Stay sharp, Leonard. This is just the beginning. At noon, a package arrived. I stared at the label. No return address. Just my name and a postal stamp from downtown Portland. Inside was a prescription bottle. The label read, Scott Lawson. Mild sedative. Take 1 tablet nightly as needed for sleep. Prescribed by Dr. Malcolm Crane. I hadn't seen Dr. Crane since Miriam died. There was a note inside handwritten on a prescription pad. Leonard Dennis mentioned you've been under stress. These will help you sleep. Take 1 each night. Dr. Crane. I held the bottle up to the light. Small white tablets unmarked. Something about it felt wrong. I set the bottle on the counter and didn't touch it. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time it was Conrad Mercer. Mr. Lawson, he said smoothly. I wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss updating your estate documents. Dennis suggested it might give you some peace of mind. I'm not interested, I said. I understand this is a difficult time. Mercer continued as if I hadn't spoken. But it's important to have your affairs in order, especially given your recent confusion. I'm not confused, I said sharply. Of course not. Mercer said, his tone patronizing. But the bank incident this morning was fraud. A pause. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Lawson. Are you sure you're feeling all right? I hung up. The noose was tightening. Financial fraud, medical intervention, legal pressure. They were coming at me from every angle. By evening, I was exhausted. I sat in my living room, the bottle of pills from Dr. Crane still sitting on the kitchen counter, and tried to think clearly. That's when Declan called. Try Leonard. I've got something, he said, his voice urgent. I had a contact at a lab analyze the vitamins Miriam was taking, the ones you kept from her medicine cabinet. I leaned forward. And thallium, Declan said. High concentrations. Crane was poisoning her slowly. The symptoms mimic a stroke, hair loss, confusion, nausea. By the time she collapsed, her system was so compromised that no one questioned it. My hands shook. They killed her. Yes, and Leonard. Declan's voice turned hard. Don't take those pills Crane sent you. I'd bet my license they're laced with something to make you confused, forgetful. They're building a case that you're mentally unstable. And once they get legal control, he didn't need to finish the sentence. I knew what came next. Declan called me at midnight. I was already awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind churning through everything that had happened. So when my phone lit up the dark bedroom, I answered before the first ring finished. When I found her, Declan said without preamble. Or rather, I found all 3 of her. His voice had that cold, professional edge cops use when the news is very bad. I sat up, heart pounding. What do you mean 3? My Celeste Lawson isn't her real name, Declan said. And she's done this before. Twice. I turned on the bedside lamp and reached for the notebook I'd been keeping, dates, names, everything Declan had uncovered. My hands shook as I wrote. I lifted prints from the wine glass she used at your house. Declan continued. Ran them through a contact at the bureau. It took some digging, but I got a hit. Multiple hits, actually. He paused, and I heard papers rustling. Identity 1, Valerie Whitman. Married to Spencer Reed, a tech consultant in Colorado, 2005 to 2008. Spencer died in a hiking accident at Rocky Mountain National Park. Fall from a cliff. The investigation was minimal, ruled accidental. Valerie collected an $800,000 life insurance payout and disappeared. My stomach turned. And the second? Identity 2, Vivian Blackwood. Married to Nolan Bennett, a real estate developer in California, 2008 to 2010. Nolan died in a boating accident on Lake Tahoe. Explosion. Faulty fuel line according to the report. Vivian collected $1.5 million and vanished again. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. And then, Declan said, his voice hardening. She became Celeste. She showed up in Portland in 2014, spent 6 months researching your family before she accidentally met Dennis at a charity event in 2015. Researching us, I whispered. I found digital footprints, Leonard. She accessed public records, your business filings, property holdings, tax information. She knew exactly how much your family was worth before she ever shook Dennis's hand. I felt sick. So this was always the plan. She targeted us. Yes. And here's the part I can't figure out. Declan paused. When did Dennis realize what she was? Is he a victim who got in too deep, or was he complicit from the start? I didn't have an answer. I didn't know my own son anymore. There's more, Declan said. I'm sending you a photo. Look at it. My phone buzzed. I opened the image. It was a photograph from a charity gala. Dennis, in a tuxedo, Celeste, in a red dress, both smiling at the camera. The caption read, Portland Children's Hospital fundraiser, March 2015. Their first meeting. Look at the background, Declan said. I zoomed in. Behind Dennis and Celeste, partially obscured by other guests, stood a man in a dark suit, Elliot Sutherland. He was watching them. He was there, I breathed. At their first meeting. Exactly, Declan said. Which means this wasn't just Celeste's plan. Elliot was involved from the beginning. He introduced her to Dennis, or orchestrated the meeting. Either way, Leonard, this goes deeper than we thought. I stared at Elliot's face in the photograph. My old friend. The man who had stood beside me at my wedding, who had been Dennis's godfather. He had been planning this for nearly a decade. Why? I asked, my voice cracking. Why would he do this? I don't know yet, Declan said. But I'm going to find out. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. Miriam knew. She figured this out. She did, Declan said quietly. And Leonard. There's something else. I found Miriam's private investigation files buried in her computer. Encrypted. She'd been digging into Celeste for months before she died. And there's a note dated February 2024. He read it aloud. Confronted C today about her past. She knows that I know. The blood drained from my face. February 2024. That was when Miriam's symptoms started. The nausea, the hair loss, the confusion. She confronted Celeste, I whispered, and Celeste killed her. Huck, that's my assessment, Declan said. Miriam discovered the truth and Celeste moved fast. Dr. Crane ramped up the poisoning. By April, Miriam was gone. I pressed my hand over my mouth, fighting back the rage and grief threatening to choke me. My wife had been brave. So goddamn brave. She had faced down a killer to protect me, to protect our family. And it had cost her everything. Leonard. Declan's voice broke through the fog. Are you still with me? Yeah, I managed. I'm here. Good. Because we need to move carefully now. Celeste is dangerous. She's got a body count, and she's not going to stop. She's been planning this for years, and she's got Elliot backing her. That means money, resources, connections. What do we do? I asked. We build the case, Declan said. I'm reaching out to investigators in Colorado and California, reopening questions about Spencer Reed and Nolan Bennett. If we can prove a pattern, we can bring this to the FBI. But it's going to take time. Why, how much time? A few weeks, maybe more. I don't have weeks, I said, my voice shaking. They're trying to get me declared incompetent. The hearing is next week. If they win, they won't, Declan said firmly. Lillian's on it. And I'm going to testify about the forged signatures, the surveillance, all of it. We're going to stop them, Leonard. But you need to stay alive long enough for us to do it. I looked around my dark bedroom, the house I'd shared with Miriam for 40 years. The place where we'd raised Dennis, where we'd been happy. Now it felt like a battlefield. I'll be careful, I said. Good. And Leonard, one more thing. What? Miriam left those files for you. She wanted you to find them. She knew you'd figure it out. She trusted you to finish what she started. I closed my eyes, tears sliding down my face. I won't let her down, I whispered. I know you won't, Declan said. Get some sleep, I'll call you tomorrow. He hung up. I sat alone in the dark, Miriam's words echoing in my head. She knows that I know. Celeste had killed my wife because Miriam had discovered the truth. And now I knew the truth too, which meant I was next. Saturday afternoon, I sat in Declan's office, surrounded by old photographs and stacks of bank records, piecing together the truth about the man I'd called my best friend for 3 decades. Declan laid the timeline across his desk like a prosecutor preparing a murder case. Except the victim wasn't a body. It was my entire adult life. Start at the beginning? I said, my voice hollow. Declan slid a faded college yearbook toward me. University of Oregon, 1963 to 1965. I opened it. There they were, young, smiling, frozen in black and white. Miriam and Elliot. They looked happy, in love. They dated for 2 years, Declan said quietly. People I tracked down say Elliot planned to propose in the summer of 1966. My chest tightened. Miriam never told me. She didn't want to hurt you, Declan replied. But that same summer she attended a friend's wedding. And that's where she met you. I remembered it clearly, the music, the laughter, the way Miriam smiled when I asked her to dance like the rest of the room had disappeared. She chose you, Declan said. And Elliot never recovered. He slid another document across the desk, a business registration from Seattle dated 1967. Elliot left Oregon, built a tech and real estate empire, made millions. But Leonard, he never married, never moved on. Every woman he dated resembled Miriam. I felt sick. In 1994, Declan continued. Elliot returned to Oregon. He approached you with a business partnership. You remember that? I nodded. He said he wanted to reconnect, put the past behind us. He lied, Declan said flatly. That was the beginning of the long game. He spread out financial records, each marked with dates and signatures. For 30 years, Elliot embedded himself into every part of your life. He advised you on deals, always pushing you toward risk. He introduced you to people who owed him favors. He positioned himself as your confidant, your friend, your son's godfather. My hands shook as I scanned the documents. 2014, Declan said, tapping a page. Elliot introduced Dr. Malcolm Crane as your family physician. Crane owed Elliot nearly $100,000 in gambling debts. Elliot paid them off. In return, Crane became compliant. Compliant, I repeated. 2015, Declan went on. The charity gala where Dennis met Celeste. Elliot orchestrated it. He brought her into your family. In 2022, I whispered, reading ahead. The loan. Declan nodded. $300,000 to Dennis for a real estate investment. It failed likely by design. Dennis couldn't repay it. Elliot owned him after that. My son, I said, my voice breaking. He's been manipulating my son. For years, Declan confirmed. Dennis may be a victim or a willing participant, but Elliot has been running a 40-year operation, waiting for the moment to destroy everything you built with Miriam. I pressed my hands to my face. There's more, Declan said softly. How I asked. He pulled out a police report, a 911 call log from April 12, 2024. The day Miriam died. You were at work, Declan said. Dennis called 911 at 10:47 a.m., reporting Miriam had collapsed. Paramedics arrived at 10:53. She was pronounced dead at 11:32. I nodded. I remembered every second. But look here, Declan said, pointing. 10:39 a.m. 911 call placed from mobile number 503-555-0147. Caller Elliot Sutherland. Reporting unresponsive female at 428 Hawthorne Drive. I stared at the page. Elliot called first. 8 minutes earlier, Declan said. Which means Elliot was at your house before Dennis. Before paramedics. The room tilted. He was there, I whispered. When she died. Declan leaned forward. Leonard, I believe Elliot administered the final dose. Then he called 911 to control the narrative. To ensure Crane was the attending physician. To make sure the death certificate read stroke. I couldn't breathe. I stood abruptly and walked to the window staring at the gray Portland sky. Elliot, my best friend, the man who stood beside me at my wedding, who held my son when he was born, who sat with me in the hospital waiting room after Miriam died. No, he hadn't sat with me. He'd been there before me. Memory snapped into place, the hospital corridor, his hand heavy on my shoulder. Leonard, Miriam went peacefully, he'd said. Dr. Crane says she didn't suffer. The stroke was too severe. He controlled the story from the first moment, and I believed him. I turned back to Declan. He killed her. Then he comforted me at the funeral. He gave the eulogy. He talked about how much he loved our family. Declan's jaw tightened. He's a sociopath. This was never about money. You took the woman he loved. So he spent 40 years dismantling your life, your business, your son, your wife. And now you. My legs gave out. I sank into the chair. What do we do? I whispered. We prove it, Declan said. Investigators are digging into the calls. Crane's finances the paper trail. But Elliot is patient. We must be smarter. I looked at the timeline. 40 years of manipulation. He'll come for me next, I said. Yes, Declan replied. But this time we'll be ready. I picked up the old photograph of Miriam and Elliot. She had chosen me, and he had never forgiven her for it. Thursday morning arrived with deceptive brightness. Clear blue skies, golden autumn leaves, the kind of day that makes you believe nothing bad could possibly happen. I was wrong. I was driving to meet Lillian at her office downtown to discuss the competency hearing scheduled for next week. The route took me east along I-84 through the Columbia River Gorge, one of the most beautiful drives in Oregon, with sweeping views of the river below and cliffs rising on either side. Traffic was light. I had the windows cracked, letting in the cool autumn air, and I was thinking about Miriam's sealed will. 6 more months until it could be opened. 6 months of walking this tightrope between investigation and survival. That's when it happened. I approached a downhill curve near mile marker 47. The speed limit dropped to 55, and I pressed the brake pedal to slow down. Nothing. My heart lurched. I pressed again harder this time. The pedal sank to the floor with no resistance. No friction. Nothing. I was still accelerating. 45 miles per hour. 50, 55. The curve was coming up fast, and beyond the guardrail the ground dropped away into a 60-meter ravine. No! I pumped the brakes again. Still nothing. A semi-truck appeared ahead and my lane brake lights, flashing red. I jerked the wheels, swerving into the next lane. A horn blared as I barely missed clipping a sedan, 60 miles per hour now. The engine screaming as the downhill slope pulled me faster. The curve ahead was sharp, almost 90 degrees. If I hit it at this speed, I didn't let myself finish the thought. Options. I needed options. The emergency brake. I yanked the handle hard. The rear wheels locked, and the car shuddered violently, fishtailing across the lane. The smell of burning rubber filled the air, but I was still going too fast. The curve was right there, guardrail, cliff, river far below. One chance! I aimed for the guardrail at an angle, praying the metal would slow me down instead of launching me over the edge. The impact was catastrophic. Metal shrieked. Glass shattered. The airbag exploded into my face, slamming my head back against the seat. The car ground along the guardrail, sparks flying the world, spinning in a chaos of sound and pain. And then silence. I sat there gasping, the airbag deflating in my lap. My hands were still gripping the wheel knuckles white. I was alive. Slowly, I turned my head. The guardrail was crumpled, bent inward from the impact. Beyond it, the cliff dropped away into nothing. I was 6 meters from the edge. 6 meters. My hands started shaking. Then my arms. Then my whole body. I fumbled for my seatbelt, unclipped it, and shoved the door open. My legs barely held me as I stumbled out onto the shoulder. A highway patrol car pulled up within minutes, lights flashing. The officer, Anderson, according to his name tag, climbed out and jogged over. "Sir, are you injured?" I don't think so," I managed. "What happened?" "Well, my brakes failed," I said, my voice shaking. I couldn't stop. Officer Anderson walked to the front of my car, inspecting the damage. "Old car, old brakes. Happens sometimes, especially on a downhill grade." "No," I said louder than I intended. "It wasn't like that. It just stopped working. Completely." Anderson gave me the look cops give people in shock. "We'll have the vehicle towed and inspected. But honestly, sir, it looks like equipment failure. You're lucky you didn't go over. Lucky." I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and called Declan. "Leonard, what's wrong?" "My brakes failed," I said. "On the gorge." "Declan, I almost..." "Where are you?" "Mile marker 47, eastbound." "I'm on my way. Don't let them tow the car until I get there." He hung up. Officer Anderson was filling out an incident report when Declan's truck pulled up 20 minutes later. Declan climbed out, his expression grim. "Mr. Foster," Anderson said. "Friend of yours." "Former Portland PD Gaukautsen," Declan said, flashing his old badge. "Mind if I take a look at the vehicle?" Anderson shrugged. "Be my guest." Declan crouched beside my car and peered underneath. I watched his face darken. He stood and gestured for me to come closer. Then he pointed. "See this," he said quietly, indicating a brake line. "That's been cut, partially severed so it would hold until you hit the brakes hard. Then it would rupture completely." My stomach dropped. "Cut professionally," Declan said. "This wasn't an accident, Leonard. Someone tried to kill you." Officer Anderson walked over. "What are you two looking at?" Declan straightened. "Officer, this brake line was tampered with. This is an attempted homicide." Anderson's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. He crouched down, examined the line, and swore under his breath. "I'll call it in," he said. "We'll need the vehicle impounded as evidence." While Anderson radioed for a detective, I stood on the shoulder of the highway, watching semi-trucks roar past, the wind from their passage buffeting me. My phone buzzed. "Unknown number." I opened the text message. "Accidents happen to careless old men. Stop digging." My blood turned to ice. I showed Declan. His jaw tightened. "They're escalating," he said. Financial manipulation didn't work. Legal pressure didn't work. So now they're trying to kill you outright. "What do?" I whispered. "You don't go anywhere alone," Declan said. "And we move faster. I'm calling the FBI. This just became a federal case." By the time the tow truck arrived and took my mangled car away, it was past noon. Declan drove me home in silence, both of us processing what had just happened. When we pulled into my driveway, he put the truck in park and turned to me. "Leonard, you can't stay here alone anymore. They know where you live. They've been inside your house. They tampered with your car while it was parked in your garage." "I know," I said quietly. "I'm staying with you tonight," Declan said. "And we're getting you out of here tomorrow. Safe house, somewhere they can't find you." I wanted to argue, to say I could handle this myself, but I was exhausted and terrified. "Okay," I whispered. Declan nodded. "Good. Now let's get inside. And Leonard," I looked at him, "we're going to catch them. All of them. I promise you that." I believed him. But as I walked into my house, the house I'd shared with Miriam for 40 years, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. 1 week after someone tried to kill me on the highway, my son invited me to dinner. I knew I shouldn't go, but I went anyway. Dennis called on Tuesday, his voice thick with what sounded like regret. Dad, I know things have been tense. Can we talk just dinner at our place Thursday night? Please. Lillian told me not to go. Declan told me it was a trap. But part of me, the part that remembered teaching Dennis to ride a bike, the part that had held him when he was born, still wanted to believe my son wasn't trying to kill me. Okay, I said. Thursday. Declan insisted I wear a wire. A tiny recording device taped to my chest, hidden under my shirt. If they say anything incriminating, he said, we'll have it on tape. Thursday, 7:00 p.m. I pulled up to Dennis and Celeste's apartment building, a sleek, modern high-rise downtown, all glass and steel. Nothing like the warm, cluttered home Miriam and I had raised him in. Dennis met me at the door with a hug that felt too tight, too rehearsed. Dad, thanks for coming. Celeste appeared behind him, smiling. Leonard, we're so glad you're here. Something was wrong. The air felt too still, too careful. The living room was immaculate white furniture, abstract art, not a single photograph. No trace of the family Dennis had come from. Celeste poured wine. I took the glass, but barely sipped. They didn't seem to notice. So we wanted to talk, Dennis said, settling onto the couch. About everything that's happened. The misunderstandings. The misunderstandings. I repeated, keeping my voice neutral. The bank thing, Dennis continued. Dad, I swear I thought you'd authorized that transfer. I was trying to help by moving $50,000 to an offshore account. Dennis's smile faltered. It was an investment opportunity. I wanted to include you without asking me first. Celeste cut in smoothly. Leonard, we know you've been under a lot of stress since Miriam passed. Grief can make things confusing. We just want to help. There it was again. The gaslighting. Making me question my own reality. I forced a smile. I appreciate the concern. Dinner's ready, Celeste announced, standing. I made your favorite. Well, Miriam's favorite. My stomach turned. Coq au vin. Chicken braised in red wine. The dish Miriam used to make on special occasions. The irony wasn't lost on me. We sat at the dining table, too formal, too staged. Celeste served the plates herself, her hands graceful and deliberate. I watched her closely. Did she add something, a sprinkle of powder, a few drops from a vial? I couldn't tell. Eat, Dad, Dennis urged. Celeste worked all day on this. I took a small bite. It tasted fine, rich, savory, nothing obviously wrong. But I didn't trust it. I pushed the food around my plate, taking tiny portions, chewing slowly. When they weren't looking, I slipped a piece of chicken into my napkin. Not hungry, Celeste asked, her eyes sharp. Doctor told me to eat light, I said. Stomach hasn't been the same since the accident. That must have been terrifying, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Brake failure, so random. I met her eyes. Yes, random. Dennis steered the conversation back to safer territory, weather, holidays, neutral topics. But every few minutes, he'd circle back. Dad, you really should meet with Conrad Mercer. He's the best estate lawyer in Portland. He could help you avoid complications. I have a lawyer, I said, Lillian Prescott. Celeste's smile was razor sharp. She's competent. But Conrad has connections, resources. I'm sure he does, I said. By 9:30, I'd had enough. I stood, thanked them for dinner, and made my excuses. Dennis walked me to the door. Think about what we said, Dad. We're family. We're on your side. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I drove home, I felt a strange sense of victory. I'd made it through. I'd recorded the conversation. I'd avoided eating most of the food. I'd won. At 11:45 p.m., I woke up in agony. The pain started in my stomach, sharp, burning, twisting. I stumbled out of bed, barely making it to the bathroom, before I vomited violently. My vision blurred. The room spun. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, but my hands wouldn't cooperate. My fingers felt numb, useless. I collapsed onto the tile floor, gasping. "Declan," I tried to shout, but it came out as a whisper. Footsteps pounded down the hall. The bathroom door flew open. Chief Leonard. Declan dropped to his knees beside me. Jesus. Hang on. He pulled out his phone, dialed 911, and scooped me up like I weighed nothing. The drive to the hospital was a blur of streetlights and pain. Providence Portland Medical Center. Emergency room. The fluorescent lights were too bright. Voices swirled around me, nurses, doctors, someone asking questions I couldn't answer. A woman in scrubs leaned over me. "Mr. Lawson, I'm Dr. Helena Cross. Can you hear me?" I nodded weakly. "We're running a blood panel. Just hold on." Time fractured. Minutes felt like hours. Dr. Cross came back, her face grim. "Mr. Lawson, there's thallium in your system. Someone poisoned you." I laughed, a bitter, broken sound, and immediately regretted it as my stomach clenched. "Same thing," I rasped, "that killed my wife." Dr. Cross's expression hardened. "We're calling the police. This is a criminal matter." 2 detectives showed up at 3 a.m. They took my statement, then left to interview Dennis and Celeste. Declan stayed with me, his face tight with fury. "They got you. Even with all our precautions, they got you. Not enough to kill me," I said weakly. "Not yet," Declan said. "But Leonard, they're not going to stop." An hour later, the detectives returned. "We questioned your son and daughter-in-law," one of them said. "They're claiming you must have eaten something earlier in the day. They said the meal was fine, they ate the same food." "They're lying," I said. "We searched their apartment. No thallium, no poison, no evidence." Of course not," I said bitterly. "They're professionals." The detective hesitated. "Mr. Lawson, without physical evidence, we can't make an arrest. It's your word against theirs." Before I could respond, Conrad Mercer arrived, slick, composed, carrying a briefcase like a weapon. "Detectives," he said smoothly. "My clients are devastated by this unfortunate food poisoning incident. They're cooperating fully, but I trust you're not accusing them of anything without evidence." The detectives exchanged glances. "No charges at this time," Mercer nodded. "Good. If there's nothing else, my clients would like to go home. This has been very traumatic for them." And just like that, it was over. No arrests, no consequences. I lay in the hospital bed, an IV in my arm, pumping fluids and collating agents to flush the poison from my system. Declan sat beside me, silent and furious. They tried to finish what they started with Miriam. I whispered. "I know," Declan said, "and they're going to try again." "I know," he said again. "But Leonard, next time they're going to have to go through me first." I closed my eyes, exhausted and defeated. They'd poisoned me in my own son's home, and there was nothing I could do about it. 2 weeks later, I stood in a county courthouse facing the surreal reality that my own son was trying to have me declared legally incompetent. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. From movies, wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of old paper, and desperation. Dennis sat at the petitioner's table with Conrad Mercer. He wouldn't look at me. Lillian sat beside me, her notebook filled with notes, ready for battle. Judge Dorothy Lang presided, a stern woman in her late 60s, silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, eyes that missed nothing. "We're here," she said, "to determine whether Scott Lawson possesses the mental capacity to manage his own affairs. Mr. Mercer, you may begin." Conrad Mercer stood smoothing his tie. "Your Honor, Scott Lawson exhibits clear signs of cognitive decline, rendering him vulnerable and incapable of managing his substantial assets. We have evidence of confusion, memory loss, and poor judgment." He clicked a remote. A video appeared on the screen. It was me stumbling through my kitchen, knocking over a glass, looking disoriented. I didn't remember that. But then I realized it must have been weeks ago when I was still taking Dr. Crane's vitamins. Before I knew, they were poisoning me. "As you can see," Mercer said, Mr. Lawson displays significant impairment. Next, he called Dr. Malcolm Crane to the stand. I watched the man who had murdered my wife swear to tell the truth. Dr. Mercer said, "You've been Mr. Lawson's physician for how long?" "Approximately 10 years, Crane said smoothly. "And in your professional opinion, does Mr. Lawson suffer from cognitive decline?" "Yes. He exhibits symptoms consistent with early-stage dementia, memory loss, disorientation, confusion. I've documented these symptoms over the past 18 months. It was a masterful performance. Calm, authoritative, completely false. Mercer introduced financial records next the $50,000 transfer, framed as evidence of my poor judgment. Then he called Dennis to the stand. I watched my son walk to the witness box, place his hand on the Bible, and swear to tell the truth. "Mr. Lawson," Mercer said gently, "can you describe your father's behavior over the past year?" Dennis swallowed. "He's been different since Mom died. He forgets conversations. He seems paranoid, accusing people of things that don't make sense. I'm worried about him. My heart broke as I listened to him lie under oath. Was this manipulation? Or had Dennis convinced himself it was true?" Lillian stood for cross-examination, her voice sharp. "Mr. Lawson, isn't it true that you owe your father's company approximately $2 million? Dennis flinched. That's a business matter." "That's a business matter," Lillian repeated. $2 million. And if your father were declared incompetent and you were appointed his guardian, you'd have control over that debt. Correct?" "Objection," Mercer said. "Relevance." "Goes to motive, Your Honor," Lillian said coolly. Judge Lang nodded. "I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Lawson." Dennis hesitated. "Yes, but that's not what this is about." "Isn't it?" Lillian said. She let the question hang in the air, then sat down. Judge Lang called a recess to review the evidence in chambers. I sat in the hallway with Lillian, my hands shaking. "They're going to win," I whispered. "No," Lillian said firmly. "They're not." When court resumed, Lillian stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence in rebuttal." She introduced an independent psychiatric evaluation arranged by Dr. Helena Cross, the ER physician who had treated me after the poisoning. This evaluation, Lillian said, was conducted by Dr. Samuel Rhodes, a neuropsychologist with no prior relationship to either party. His conclusion, Scott Lawson, is cognitively intact. No signs of dementia, no impairment. She handed copies to the judge and to Mercer. Next, she presented forensic evidence of the forged signature on the bank transfer documents. This signature, she said, was analyzed by a certified handwriting expert. It's a forgery. Mr. Lawson did not authorize that transfer. Someone stole $50,000 from him and then used it as evidence of incompetence. Mercer shifted uncomfortably. "Finally," Lillian said, "I'd like to introduce medical records showing that Mr. Lawson has no history of cognitive decline. In fact, Dr. Crane's own notes from 2 years ago describe Mr. Lawson as sharp and mentally acute. It's only in the past year after Dr. Crane began prescribing certain medications that these so-called symptoms appeared." Judge Lang leaned forward. "Are you suggesting Dr. Crane's treatment caused the symptoms?" "I'm suggesting," Lillian said carefully, "that something caused them, and it wasn't dementia." She paused, then played her final card. "Your Honor, I'd like to play a recording. It was made by Miriam Lawson Leonard's late wife 2 days before she died." The courtroom went silent. Lillian pressed play on a small device. Miriam's voice filled the room, weak but clear. "No, if Scott is ever declared incompetent after I'm gone, know that it's a lie. My husband is the sharpest man I've ever known. And if someone is trying to control him legally, look to our son. And his wife." I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. Dennis went pale. Mercer's jaw tightened. Judge Lang sat back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "Anything else, Ms. Prescott?" she asked. "No, Your Honor. The evidence speaks for itself." Judge Lang nodded. "I'll issue my ruling now." She looked at Dennis, then at me. "The petition is denied. Mr. Scott Lawson is clearly of sound mind and fully capable of managing his own affairs. Furthermore," she turned to Dennis, "I'm ordering an investigation into potential elder abuse and financial exploitation. This court does not take lightly attempts to strip competent individuals of their rights through fraudulent means." Dennis's face went white. Conrad Mercer stood abruptly. "Your Honor, my client acted in good faith." "Your client," Judge Lang said coldly, "lied under oath. And you, Mr. Mercer, brought a case with falsified evidence. I suggest you both consult with counsel. This hearing is adjourned." She banged the gavel. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Lillian squeezed my hand. "You won, Leonard." "We won," I corrected. But as we walked toward the parking lot, I saw him, Elliot Sutherland, leaning against his car, watching. He wasn't angry, he was smiling. As I passed, he pushed off the car and walked toward me. "Leonard," he said. "That was impressive, truly. Miriam trained you well." I stopped, my fists clenched. We need to talk," Elliot said. "Privately." Declan stepped between us. "He's not going anywhere with you." Elliot raised his hands. "I'm not here to threaten anyone. I'm here to make a deal." "I don't make deals with killers," I said. Elliot's smile widened. "Not even if it saves your life." Elliot suggested we meet at Waterfront Park, the same place where our friendship had supposedly begun 30 years ago. I agreed, but I didn't go alone. Declan would watch from a distance, camera in hand, recording everything. The autumn afternoon was cold. The Willamette River churned beside us, dark and swift. Elliot sat on our usual bench, the one where we'd discussed business deals, celebrated successes, and mourned Miriam's passing. Except none of it had been real. I sat down beside him, keeping a careful distance. "Leonard," Elliot said, smiling. "You did well in court today. Lillian Prescott is a formidable attorney." I didn't bother with pretense. "I know, Elliot. I know everything." His smile didn't waver. "Everything that sounds ambitious." "What exactly do you think you know?" I met his eyes. "You and Miriam, the breakup, 40 years of resentment, Dr. Crane, Celeste, the loan to Dennis. You orchestrated all of it." Elliot leaned back, almost relaxed. "Miriam and I were supposed to spend our lives together. She was brilliant, beautiful, perfect. And she chose you, a medical supply salesman." His voice was calm, but beneath it was pure venom. "Then I built an empire in Seattle," he continued, "made millions, but every success felt hollow because she wasn't there. So I came back, befriended you, waited." "Waited for what?" I asked. "For the right moment," Elliot said simply. "Patience, Leonard. That's something you never understood. You rushed into everything, your marriage, your business, your life. But I played the long game, my hands clenched into fists." "Did you kill her?" Elliot tilted his head, considering the question. "Miriam made her choice 40 years ago. We all have to live with consequences. Some consequences just take longer to arrive. It wasn't a confession, not technically, but it was enough. You introduced Dr. Crane to our family," I said, my voice shaking. "You loaned Dennis money so you could control him. You brought Celeste into our lives. You've been planning this for decades." Planning, Elliot said, is such a crude word. I prefer cultivating. I cultivated opportunities. I cultivated relationships. I cultivated leverage. He turned to face me fully. "Do you know what it's like, Leonard? To watch the woman you love build a life with someone else. To see her happy with a man who didn't deserve her. To attend her son's birthday parties and pretend to be a friend when all you want is, to burn it all down? So you did, I said. Eventually, Elliot agreed. But not out of anger, out of fairness. Miriam chose you. So I made sure you'd lose everything she gave you. Your son, your company, your peace of mind, and eventually your life. The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. You won't get away with this, I said. Elliot laughed a soft, bitter sound. Leonard, I already have. You won a legal battle today. Congratulations. But legal battles are stressful, not good for the heart. A man your age should be careful. It was a threat, thinly veiled but unmistakable. What do you want? I asked. I want you to understand, Elliot said. I want you to know that every moment of suffering you've experienced, every doubt, every betrayal, every sleepless night was by design. I want you to carry that knowledge with you to the grave. He stood brushing invisible dust from his coat. You should reconcile with Dennis. Settle things before something unfortunate happens. After all, accidents are so common at your age. I stood too, my legs shaking with rage. You're insane. No, Elliot said calmly. I'm patient. There's a difference. He turned to leave, then paused. Leonard, one more thing. I waited. Miriam called your name at the end. Even as she was dying, even knowing what I'd done, she chose you. Do you know how that felt, to be there in that moment and hear her say your name? My breath caught. You were there. You gave her the final dose. Elliot's smile was cold. She should have chosen me. 40 years ago, she should have chosen me. And because she didn't, I made sure you'd lose everything she loved, your son, your company, your life. That's fair, don't you think? He was admitting it. All of it. But there were no witnesses. No recording device on my body. Declan had the camera, but he was 50 meters away. It was just Elliot's word against mine. Enjoy your victory today, Leonard, Elliot said. But victories are fleeting. Consequences are forever. He walked away, hands in his pockets, unhurried. I stood by the river, shaking with fury and grief. My phone buzzed. A text from Declan. Got it all on video. But Leonard, I found something else. Elliot's been moving large sums offshore, and I found encrypted messages. I think he's hired someone. We need to get you somewhere safe. Tonight. Declan insisted on staying at my house that night. I didn't argue. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I understood why. The sound woke me, or rather the near absence of sound. A soft click from downstairs. I lay frozen in bed, listening. Another sound, careful footsteps on the hardwood floor. Someone was inside my house. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached slowly for my phone on the nightstand, keeping my breathing steady. Declan had installed a security system after the break incident. Why hadn't the alarm gone off? Then I heard Declan's voice, sharp and commanding. Stop right there. Police. Hands where I can see them. A scuffle erupted downstairs, furniture scraping, a grunt of pain, the heavy thud of bodies hitting the floor. I grabbed the baseball bat from my closet. Miriam had always insisted I keep something for self-defense, and crept to the bedroom door. My hands shook as I eased it open. Voices below. Declan calm but firm. Don't move. I said, don't move. I descended the stairs, bat raised, and found Declan kneeling on a man's back, pinning him face down on my living room floor. The intruder was in his early 30s, athletic build, dressed head to toe in black. Professional. Leonard, Declan said without looking up. Call 911. Don't touch anything. I dialed with trembling fingers, my eyes locked on the intruder. On the coffee table beside them, a set of lockpicks, a suppressed handgun, and a small syringe. 911, what's your emergency? There's an intruder in my home, I said, my voice shaking. He's been subdued. We need police at 428 Hawthorne Drive. Officers are on the way. Are you injured? No, but he has a weapon. Within 5 minutes, sirens wailed outside. Portland PD flooded my house. 3 patrol officers followed shortly by 2 detectives. Declan identified himself, flashing his old badge. Former Portland PD. I was staying with Mr. Lawson for his protection. This man broke in through the back door. I apprehended him before he reached the bedroom. The lead detective, a woman in her 40s named Reyes, examined the items on the table. Lockpicks, suppressed firearm. And this. She picked up the syringe with gloved hands. We'll need to test this. One of the officers cuffed the intruder, Travis Sullivan, according to his ID, and read him his rights. Sullivan said nothing. His face was blank, professional. He'd done this before. Detective Reyes called for an evidence tech who ran a preliminary field test on the syringe's contents. A potassium chloride, the tech said grimly. High concentration. Reyes looked at me. Mr. Lawson, do you know what this is? I shook my head. It's a chemical that stops the heart, she said. In a dose this large, it would cause cardiac arrest within minutes, and unless someone was specifically looking for it during an autopsy, it would look like a natural heart attack. My legs went weak. I sank onto the couch. They were going to make it look like I died in my sleep. He's not talking, one of the officers reported. Lawyered up immediately. Check his phone, Declan said. Reyes nodded. The tech unlocked Sullivan's phone, a burner but not wiped. Encrypted messaging app. Cryptocurrency payments and messages. The most recent one sent 12 hours ago. Make it look natural. Best a heart attack. Double payment if completed before Thanksgiving. Reyes read it aloud, then looked at me. Mr. Lawson, do you have any idea who sent this? Yes, I said quietly. Elliot Sutherland. Can you prove it? Not yet, Declan said. But we will. Reyes made a call. This just became federal. We've got a murder for hire crossing state lines, dark web facilitation, and possible connection to a prior homicide. She hung up and turned to me. The FBI is on the way. Agent Harper Sinclair arrived at 4 a.m. She was sharp-eyed, mid-40s, with the kind of presence that commanded a room without effort. She reviewed the evidence, questioned Sullivan, who refused to speak, and then sat down across from me at my kitchen table. Mr. Lawson, she said, I'm Special Agent Harper Sinclair, FBI. As of now, this is a federal investigation. Murder for hire conspiracy and potentially connected to your wife's death. You're under our protection. I nodded, too exhausted to speak. I've been briefed by Detective Reyes and Mr. Foster, Sinclair continued. I understand you have evidence linking Elliot Sutherland to this conspiracy. I'll need to see everything you have: recordings, financial records, witness statements. We have it all, Declan said. Sinclair's gaze shifted to me. Mr. Lawson, I need to ask you something. The message on Sullivan's phone mentioned a deadline before Thanksgiving. That's 3 weeks from now. Do you know why that date is significant? I stared at her, my mind racing. Thanksgiving. Why would Elliot want me dead before Thanksgiving? I don't know, I said slowly. I don't understand. And then it hit me. Miriam's sealed will. The one Lillian had mentioned. The one that couldn't be opened until 1 year after Miriam's death. April 2025. But Thanksgiving was in late November. 3 weeks away. What happens at Thanksgiving? Sinclair asked, watching me closely. I don't know, I admitted. But Miriam left a sealed will. It can't be opened until April, 6 months from now. Sinclair exchanged a glance with Declan. Is there anything else tied to that date? A family gathering, a business meeting? I thought hard. Dennis and Celeste always hosted Thanksgiving. They invited me every year, even after Miriam died. And this year? Sinclair asked. They invited me 2 weeks ago, I said. Before the competency hearing, Sinclair leaned forward. Mr. Lawson, I think they're planning something for Thanksgiving. If Sullivan failed tonight, they'll try again. And whatever they're planning, it's tied to that dinner. My blood ran cold. A trap. Thanksgiving dinner with my son and daughter-in-law. One last chance to finish what they'd started. What do we do? I asked. Sinclair's expression was grim. We set a trap of our own. The FBI moved me to a safe house, an unremarkable apartment in Beaverton. For 2 weeks I lived in limbo while Agent Sinclair built her case. The safe house was comfortable but sterile beige walls, generic furniture, the kind of place designed to be forgotten. I met with Agent Sinclair daily, answering questions, reviewing evidence, watching my life become an FBI case file. It was exhausting and necessary. Sinclair's team worked fast. Within 3 days, they had a forensic audit of Dennis's finances. The results were damning. Dennis had embezzled $2.1 million over 3 years from the family company, small transfers at first, then larger ones as he grew bolder. The money moved through offshore accounts, then vanished. Some of it went to repay Elliot's loan. Some went to Celeste. The rest was untraceable. Your son, Sinclair, said, sliding the report across the table, has been stealing from you since 2021. Right around the time Celeste entered his life. I stared at the numbers, my hands shaking. He's been planning this for years. Or being manipulated for years, Sinclair said. We're still trying to determine which. 5 days in the FB. I obtained a court order to exhume Miriam's body. I signed the papers with trembling hands, hating every second of it. Dr. Helena Cross, the ER physician who had saved my life after the poisoning, conducted the new autopsy. The results came back a week later. Thallium in the bone marrow, in hair samples preserved from the original autopsy. Miriam had been poisoned over a period of 3 to 6 months. The official cause of death was changed from stroke to homicide by poisoning. Sinclair showed me the report in the safe house. Your wife was murdered, Mr. Lawson. We can prove it now. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. Miriam. My beautiful, brilliant Miriam. She had known. She had tried to warn me, and they had killed her for it. The FBI reopened the cases of Celeste's previous husbands. Spencer Reed, 2008. Hiking accident in Rocky Mountain National Park. New evidence: Reed's climbing harness showed signs of deliberate wear, frayed in a way consistent with sabotage, not natural degradation. Nolan Bennett, 2010. Boat explosion on Lake Tahoe. New evidence: traces of an accelerant found in archived debris from the wreckage. The explosion wasn't an accident. Both cases were now homicide investigations. Celeste was a serial killer. 10 days in the FB, I brought in Dr. Malcolm Crane and Conrad Mercer for questioning. Separately, in interrogation rooms designed to break people. Crane lawyered up within 10 minutes. Refused to answer a single question. Mercer lasted 5 minutes before invoking his right to counsel. Neither of them talked. They're scared, Sinclair said. But they're more scared of Elliot than they are of us. At least for now. The breakthrough came on day 12. Sinclair's Financial Crimes Unit traced the cryptocurrency payments from Travis Sullivan backward through a labyrinth of shell companies. The trail led to a company registered in Delaware, which was owned by a subsidiary in the Caymans, which was owned by another subsidiary in Singapore, and at the end of the chain, a holding company tied to Elliot Sutherland's business empire. But it was insulated, layered, designed for plausible deniability. He's smart, Sinclair said, spreading the financial documents across the table. Every transaction has a buffer. Every company has a legitimate front. If we arrested him now, his lawyers would tear us apart in court. So what do? I asked. We get him to confess, Sinclair said. Or we get one of his accomplices to flip. On day 14, Agent Sinclair sat across from me in the safe house and laid out the brutal truth. Mr. Lawson, we have enough evidence to arrest Dennis for embezzlement. We can charge Celeste with 3 counts of murder across 3 states. We can charge Dr. Crane and Conrad Mercer as accessories to murder and conspiracy. She paused. But Elliot Sutherland, every connection runs through intermediaries. He's protected. Unless we get direct evidence, a confession testimony from one of the others, he walks. I felt rage boiling up inside me. So the man who orchestrated my wife's murder just gets away with it? Not necessarily, Sinclair said, leaning forward. We have one shot. Thanksgiving dinner. At your house. I stared at her. We wire your entire home, she continued. You invite all of them, Dennis, Celeste, Dr. Crane, Mercer, and Elliot. You sit down at that table and you make them talk. You get them to admit what they did. On tape. Admissible in court. That's... I couldn't find the words. That's insane. It's risky, Sinclair agreed. But it's our only option. Travis Sullivan won't talk. Crane and Mercer won't talk. Elliot's too insulated to touch. But if you can get them together in one room with their guard down, people slip. They brag. They argue. They make mistakes. And if they don't, I asked. If they just sit there and eat turkey and pretend everything's fine, then you push, Sinclair said. You confront them. You call them out. You make it impossible for them to stay silent. I laughed bitterly. You're asking me to sit across from my son from the people who murdered my wife and trick them into confessing. Yes, Sinclair said simply. That's exactly what I'm asking. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. What if they try to kill me? I asked quietly. Follow so. We'll have agents in place, Sinclair said. Declan will be there. The house will be under surveillance. The second things go south, we move in. The second things go south, I repeated. After they've already tried. Sinclair's expression softened. Mr. Lawson Leonard, I know what I'm asking. I know it's dangerous, but it's the only way to get justice for Miriam, and it's the only way to stop them from hurting anyone else. I thought about Miriam, the way she'd smiled at me the day we met, the way she'd fought to protect me even as she was dying. She had been brave. Now it was my turn. Okay, I said, I'll do it. Sinclair nodded. Then let's set the trap. I spent the week preparing for what might be my last Thanksgiving. The FBI prepared for a sting operation. Both of us hoped I'd survive it. Agent Sinclair's tech team invaded my house on Tuesday morning, installing pinhole cameras in every room, microphones hidden in light fixtures, panic buttons disguised as everyday objects. I watched them turn my home into a trap, and I felt Miriam's presence in every corner. The surveillance setup took 6 hours. Cameras in the living room, dining room, kitchen hallways. Even the bathroom, just in case, Sinclair said. Microphones in the chandelier above the dining table and the smoke detectors in the decorative vases Miriam had loved. A panic button disguised as a book on the living room shelf. Another in the kitchen drawer. If anything goes wrong, Sinclair explained, you say the safe word, Miriam's favorite, and we breach immediately. Declan will be in a van outside with a tactical team. Response time 30 seconds. 30 seconds felt like an eternity, but I nodded. Understood. That afternoon I sat down and wrote the invitations. By hand, personal. The way Miriam would have done it. Dear Dennis, I'd like to have one more family Thanksgiving. Life is short, and I don't want to waste what time we have left on anger. Please come. Bring Celeste and Olivia. Love, Dad. I wrote similar notes to Dr. Crane, Conrad, Mercer, and Elliot, each one carefully worded. Gentle. Forgiving. A perfect lie. I mailed them Wednesday morning. The responses came quickly. Dennis called that evening. Dad, are you sure about this? His voice was wary, suspicious. I'm sure, I said. I've been thinking a lot about family, about what's important. I don't want us to be estranged, Dennis. You're my son. A long pause. Okay, we'll be there. 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock, I confirmed. After he hung up, I sat in the dark, my hands shaking. My son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, and I was about to destroy him. Celeste texted, "Will attend. Thank you for the invitation." Cold, professional, no warmth. Dr. Crane sent an email, "Leonard, I appreciate the gesture. I'll be there." Conrad Mercer's assistant called, "Mr. Mercer accepts your kind invitation and will arrive at 7 p.m. And then Elliot called. Leonard. He said, his voice smooth. This is a lovely gesture. I'm touched. Of course I'll be there. We're family after all. There was amusement in his tone. He knew something was off, but he was too arrogant to decline. I'm glad, I said. It'll be good to have everyone together. Indeed, Elliot said. See you Thursday. He hung up. I stared at the phone, my stomach churning. They were all coming. Agent Sinclair briefed me Wednesday afternoon in the safe house. Your goal, she said, is to keep them talking, get them arguing, make them contradict each other. If Dennis breaks, the others might follow. But save Elliot for last, he's the smartest, the most dangerous. If you push him too early, he'll shut everything down. And if they don't talk, I asked. Then you confront them, Sinclair said. You call them out. You tell them what you know. Force their hand. What if they try to leave? We'll be watching. If anyone tries to run, we move in. I nodded, memorizing the plan. Declan and Lillian visited me Wednesday evening. Emotional goodbyes disguised as social calls. Lillian hugged me at the door. Leonard, you're the bravest man I know. Miriam would be so proud of you. I hope so, I said quietly. Declan clasped my shoulder. I'll be in the van outside. Any trouble, we're coming in? You're not alone? Thank you, I said, for everything. After they left, I sat alone in Miriam's office. Her photograph smiled at me from the desk taken on our 30th anniversary, her eyes bright and full of life. Tomorrow, I said to her picture, I'm going to finish what you started. I'm going to make them pay for what they did. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. The room was silent, but I felt her presence. Warm, steady. She'd always been braver than me. I wrote a letter to Olivia. My granddaughter, 8 years old. Innocent, dear Olivia, if Grandpa isn't here for your next birthday, know that I loved you very much. Your father made some bad choices, but you are a good, kind child, and none of this is your fault. Be brave, be smart, and remember that love is stronger than hate. Love always, Grandpa. I sealed the letter and left it with Lillian's contact information, just in case. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and gray. I dressed in my best suit, the navy blue one Miriam had loved. She'd always said it made me look distinguished. I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my tie. 65 years old, about to walk into a room full of people who wanted me dead. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry, and I was ready. Agent Sinclair's voice crackled through the earpiece hidden in my collar. Leonard, you're wired. Video and audio are live. Your safe word is Miriam's favorite, say that, and we breach immediately. Are you ready? I looked at Miriam's photograph one last time. 40 years of love, against Elliot's 40 years of hate. Let's end this, I whispered. At 6:30 p.m., I set the table. Plates, silverware, wine glasses, the good china Miriam had saved for special occasions. Everything perfect, everything in place. A trap disguised as a family dinner. At 6:50, I heard the first car pull into the driveway. My hands were steady, my mind was clear. I walked to the front door and opened it. Before Scott confronts them, I want to hear from you. Who do you think is most guilty, Dennis, Celeste, or Elliot? Comment below and rate this story from 1 to 10 so I know you're still watching. Your engagement helps these stories reach more people. Quick note, some upcoming moments are dramatized for impact. If it's not your style, that's okay. If you're ready, let's watch the masks fall. They arrived one by one, each wearing a mask of civility over guilty consciences. By 6:30, they were all seated at my table. The Last Supper. I watched them take their places, Dennis and Celeste to my right, Elliot to my left, Dr. Crane and Conrad Mercer across from me. Harold and Irene Sutton, my innocent neighbors, sat at the far end of the table, a buffer of normalcy. The table looked beautiful. Miriam would have been proud. Small talk over appetizers, forced, awkward, everyone watching everyone else. I played the gracious host. Thank you all for coming. It's been a difficult year. Dennis shifted in his seat. Dad, this means a lot. Family should stick together. I smiled. Family. Yes. That's what I want to talk about. The room went still. At 7 o'clock, I stood and tapped my wine glass. The FBI was recording everything. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, I said. Some of you I've known for decades. Some of you I thought I knew. The air changed. Everyone went quiet. I turned to Dr. Crane. I'm Malcolm, I said. You signed my wife's death certificate, cause of death stroke. But you never ordered an autopsy. Dr. Crane set down his fork. Leonard, I don't think Thanksgiving is the time. I had Miriam's body exhumed, I said, cutting him off. New autopsy. She was poisoned. With thallium. Over a period of months. I slid the autopsy report across the table. Dr. Crane went pale. I had no idea. Didn't you? I said. I pulled out my phone and played an audio file provided by the FBI. Dr. Crane's voice recorded months ago. The patient's unfortunate decline is progressing as expected. Elliot's voice. Good. Keep me updated. The room froze. Dr. Crane stammered. That's taken out of context. Is it? I said. Because the FBI has 6 more recordings just like it. Harold Sutton looked horrified. Leonard, what is this? Please stay seated, Harold, I said gently. You're witnesses now. I turned to Conrad Mercer. Conrad, I said. You filed legal documents claiming I was incompetent. You forged my signature. Mercer stood abruptly. I'm leaving. This is completely inappropriate. Declan stepped out of the kitchen, blocking the doorway. Sit down, Mr. Mercer, Declan said. Dinner's not over. Mercer's face went red, but he sat. I pulled out a stack of emails printed highlighted. These are your exchanges with Dennis, I said. Expedite the process. Make it look natural. Would you like to explain? Mercer said nothing. His jaw was tight, calculating. I turned to Celeste. My daughter-in-law sat perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Celeste, I said. Or should I call you Valerie Vivian? Her eyes narrowed. I laid out her history like a prosecutor presenting evidence. She was Valerie Whitman, 2008. Married to Spencer Reed. He died in a hiking accident. You collected $800,000. I placed a photograph on the table, Spencer Reed's damaged climbing harness. The FBI had it re-examined. It was sabotaged. Celeste didn't flinch. Vivian Blackwood, 2010. Married to Nolan Bennett. He died in a boat explosion. You collected $1.5 million. Another photographed debris from the boat marked with evidence tags. Traces of an accelerant. The explosion wasn't an accident. I spread the FBI photos across the table like playing cards. Harold and Irene Sutton looked horrified. Irene started to stand. Please, I said to them, stay. You need to hear this. Irene sank back down her hand, clutching Harold's. And now, I said, turning back to Celeste. You're here, married to my son, and 6 months after you entered our lives, my wife is dead. Celeste's expression didn't change. She was ice. You're very good at this, I said quietly. You find men with money. You marry them, you kill them, and you move on. That's an interesting story, Celeste said, her voice calm. But you can't prove I had anything to do with Miriam. Can't I? I said. I placed one final document on the table, a financial record. The FBI traced payments from an offshore account to Dr. Crane. The same account that received transfers from Dennis, and before that from Elliot Sutherland. Celeste stood her chair, scraping back. This is insane, she said. You invited us here to accuse us of murder based on what conspiracy theories and old police reports. She walked toward the door. Sit down, I said quietly. She stopped her hand on the doorframe. We're not done, I said. Dennis, your turn. My son looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. The mask was cracking. Dennis, I said, my voice shaking. Did you know, when you married her, did you know what she was? Dennis opened his mouth, closed it. His hands were trembling. Dad, did you know she was going to kill your mother? I asked. Oh, no, Dennis said, his voice breaking. I swear I didn't. But you knew about the embezzlement, I said. $2.1 million. You stole from the family company. To pay off Elliot. To pay off debts. To fund what her lifestyle. Dennis buried his face in his hands. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, I said. Celeste's voice cut through the room, sharp and cold. This is pointless. You have no proof, no confession, no evidence that would hold up in court. You're a grieving old man trying to make sense of his wife's death. She turned to leave again. Sit down, I said louder this time. Declan moved to block her. Celeste looked at him, then at me, and slowly, deliberately sat back down. Fine, she said. Let's play this out. What do you want, Leonard? A confession. You're not going to get one. I looked at my son, at the boy I'd raised, the man I no longer knew. No, I said softly. Tell me the truth. Did you help her kill your mother? Dennis looked at me, tears streaming down his face. And for the first time in months, I saw my son, really saw him. Broken, terrified, trapped. I didn't know, he whispered. Not until it was too late. And by then, I was in too deep. Dennis couldn't meet my eyes. His hands trembled beneath the table. Beside him, Celeste leaned close and hissed, "Don't say anything." But I could see it in his face. He was breaking. I kept pushing even as it shattered my heart. I slid the stack of documents across the table. The papers rustled loudly in the suffocating silence. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. The wall clock ticked overhead each second, like a blade twisting deeper into my chest. $2,100,000, I said, my voice steady and cold. Embezzled over 3 years. Hidden in offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Grand Cayman, specifically. Dennis's mouth opened. His lips trembled as if to deny it, but no sound came out. Dad, I can explain. His voice cracked. Your mother discovered it, I said, cutting him off. I pulled out the photocopied journal page, Miriam's elegant handwriting, painfully familiar, and placed it in front of him. I pointed to a single line written in dark blue ink. March 2023. She wrote about it here. I read the words aloud slowly. Dennis is stealing from his father. I need to find proof. Dennis flinched as if struck. Sweat gathered on his forehead. Dad, Your mother spent the last 6 months of her life investigating you. I continued, my voice trembling, despite my effort to control it. The woman who gave birth to you, raised you, loved you more than her own life. She cried every night, Dennis. Did you know that? I didn't want this. He sobbed. Tears poured down his face. I was drowning in debt. An investment went bad. I didn't know what to do. Then Elliot said he could help, but then Celeste. Shut up, Dennis, Celeste snapped, but he couldn't stop. The words spilled out like a dam collapsing. I'm sorry, Dad. I never wanted this. They said Mom wouldn't suffer. Dr. Crane promised she'd pass peacefully. I never thought she'd find out. His voice broke completely. I just needed money to pay off the debts. I was weak. And then it was too late to stop. My chest felt crushed. My son. My blood. Did you know they were going to kill your mother? Dennis shook his head violently, tears dropping onto his lap. Not at first. I thought it was just making her sick. To keep you distracted. To buy time. But by the time I realized, she already knew. She confronted Celeste in February. He looked at Celeste, voice shaking. And Celeste said it was too late. That if I didn't see it through, I'd go down too. The room went deathly still. Then Dennis whispered, barely audible, It was Elliot's plan. All of it. He orchestrated everything from the beginning. I slowly turned toward the man seated at the far end of the table, Elliot Sutherland. The man who had eaten at my table hundreds of times. My closest friend for 30 years. He sat perfectly still, wine glass in hand, watching with calm fascination, as if observing a performance. 30 years, Elliot. I said, my voice ice cold. You've been playing a very long game. Elliot set his glass down slowly. Leonard, your son is having a breakdown. This is unfortunate. Perhaps we should call lawyers and a psychiatrist before this gets worse. You were at my house when Miriam died, I said, never breaking eye contact. You called 911 8 minutes before Dennis. Why were you there? The smile faded from Elliot's face. He scanned the table, Dennis shaking Celeste, pale, Dr. Crane staring down, Conrad Mercer shifting in his seat. Then he looked back at me, and I saw it, the hatred he'd carried for 40 years. Elliot stood. The mask was gone. His voice dropped cold and venomous. Fine, Leonard. You want the truth. I said nothing. Yes. I planned everything he said, stepping forward, eyes fever bright. I buried Dennis in debt. I introduced Celeste, knowing exactly who she was. 2 dead husbands. I chose her for a reason. He laughed bitterly. I owned Dr. Crane with a $300,000 gambling debt. Enough to ruin him. Enough to ensure obedience. His voice shook with rage. I watched Miriam suffer. I counted every day she weakened, knowing she chose you over me. He leaned closer, whispering. She called your name at the end. I was there. I held her hand. And even dying, she still chose you. His voice turned vicious. So I made sure you lost everything she loved. Your son. Your company. Your life. That's justice. Silence. Then, FBI, nobody move. Doors burst open. Agents in tactical gear flooded the room, weapons raised, orders shouted. Dr. Crane screamed, hands up. Mercer collapsed into his chair. Dennis broke down, sobbing. Celeste didn't move. Special Agent Harper Sinclair stepped forward. You are all under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, and federal crimes. Elliot stared at me in shock. You recorded everything. I stood. Miriam taught me how. Handcuffs snapped shut. As they were led away, Elliot locked eyes with me, hatred burning until the end. When the room emptied, only silence remained. Declan entered, resting a hand on my shoulder. You did it. I picked up Miriam's photo, holding it close. I promised, I whispered. Miriam had fought to the end, and I finished what she started. Task 18. 2 months later, I stood in the courtroom and watched justice be served. It felt nothing like victory. The sentencing hearing was swift and clinical. Judge Lang read each verdict aloud. I sat in the gallery, Lillian and Declan flanking me, listening to numbers that would never bring Miriam back. Dennis Lawson, 15 years federal prison. Reduced for cooperation and remorse. Celeste Lawson, life without parole. 3 counts of murder, Spencer Reed, Nolan Bennett, Miriam Lawson. Dr. Malcolm Crane, 20 years. Conspiracy to commit murder fraud. Conrad Mercer, 10 years. Obstruction of justice conspiracy. Elliot Sutherland, life imprisonment, death penalty under consideration. Mastermind. Multiple counts. When the gavel fell, I felt nothing. Just hollow. A week later, I visited Dennis at the county jail before his transfer. Glass partition. Phone pressed to ear. My son looked smaller, somehow diminished. Dad, I don't expect forgiveness. Dennis whispered, voice breaking. I just want you to know. Mom loved you more than anything. She told me that even at the end. She said you were the best man she'd ever known. My throat tightened. I know, son, I know. That was all I could say. All I had left to give him. The sealed will was opened by court order in mid-January. Lillian brought me to her office. She handed me the documents with reverence. Inside, Complete evidence against Elliot financial crimes. Communications documents Miriam had collected for 20 years. She had been building a case long before she knew she was dying, and beneath it all, a letter. My dearest Leonard, if you are reading this, you survived. I knew you would. You are stronger than you ever believed. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything. I tried to protect you until I had irrefutable proof. Whatever time we had left, I wanted it to be full of love, not fear. Use the time you have now to live fully. Live for both of us. I love you. Always have. Always will. Miriam. I pressed the letter to my chest and wept. Declan put his hand on my shoulder and waited in silence. Miriam had also established a fund, the Miriam Lawson Foundation for Victims of Domestic Violence and Elder Abuse, seeded with $200,000 from our savings. She had planned her legacy, even as she was being poisoned. I sold the company in February. 50% of the proceeds went to Miriam's foundation. The rest I used to rebuild. Declan and Lillian became fixtures in my life: Sunday dinners, holidays, the family I had lost and found again. Declan introduced me to his daughter. Lillian invited me to her book club. I renovated Miriam's office into a memorial library. Her photos, her favorite books, a peaceful space where I could feel her presence. And I volunteered. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I worked at the foundation, helping others navigate the darkness I had survived. One evening in early March, I stood at Miriam's grave. Fresh flowers in hand, white lilies, her favorite. You saved me, I said quietly, even after you were gone. Your evidence, your preparation, your love, it was enough. The wind rustled through the trees. I promise I'll honor the time you gave me. I'll make sure no one else suffers what we did. I knelt, placed my hand on the cold marble headstone. Thank you, my love, for everything. A month later, I found myself at a support group session guiding a younger widower through his grief. He was raw, broken, lost. He looked at me, eyes hollow. How do you move forward after losing everything? I thought of Miriam, of Declan and Lillian, of my granddaughter Olivia, whom I still saw Dennis had given permission before his transfer. You don't get over it, I said. You move through it. And you let the people who love you carry some of the weight. He nodded, tears falling. I stayed with him until he was ready to leave. That night I sat in Miriam's library, her journal open on my lap. I read her words again, words of love, of fear, of determination. Scott is the strongest man I know. If something happens to me, he will find the truth. And he will survive. She had believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. They say grief never ends. But I've learned something else, neither does love. Miriam's love protected me from beyond the grave, and it will guide me for whatever time I have left. This isn't just survival, this is grace. To those listening to this family betrayal, remember this: God gives us wisdom to recognize truth and strength to face darkness when it appears. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible. Looking back, I can clearly see how my own family betrayal unfolded. I trusted too easily. I dismissed the uneasy feeling in my chest. I allowed friendship and familiarity to cloud my judgment. Evil rarely arrives with a warning. It grows quietly in the shadows. And I ignored the signs because it was easier than confronting them. Don't repeat my mistake. If something feels wrong in your home, pay attention. If someone you love changes in ways that don't make sense, ask questions. Silence protects deception. Blind trust feeds it. That's how family betrayal takes root, slowly, invisibly, until it's too late. Some people may see these as dramatic grandpa stories filled with anger and retribution, but that was never my purpose. These grandpa stories are about justice, not revenge. They are about protecting the ones you love even after they're gone. What I did came from love, not hatred. Love for Miriam. Love that refused to let lies bury her memory. Still, even the strongest grandpa stories mean nothing if they leave your heart empty. True victory isn't destroying someone else. It's rebuilding yourself. It's honoring the dead by living with courage and integrity. So love fiercely. Protect wisely. Trust carefully. And when family betrayal finds you, don't let it destroy who you are. If this message touched you, share your thoughts below. And remember, some elements of this story may be fictionalized for storytelling purposes.